All right, so somebody asked me to watch this Vice video about men. It's called "Be a Man: Modernists and Traditionalists Debate Masculinity." I'm a little bit burnt out on the whole manosphere thing. I think that we've kind of come to a social understanding that it is dumb, that too much extreme advocation for anything is annoying. There are men that need advocating for sure, but the manosphere takes it too far, and the point to a point of disrespecting women. And frankly, some forms of feminism do the same thing to men. And it's mostly basically TikTok crybaby man, boy versus girl personified. That's what we've really devolved. But I think society's starting to understand that it's stupid. But anyway, we got some stuff here. Let's do it.
I'm so tired of like paying $150 for a first date, and then you just ghost me. And the next week I'm like,
why are you paying $150 for a date, bro? I would do 20. Hey, I would do half apps at Applebee's
for cash. I'm like, I could have really used that $150. Like, why did I have to?
So the trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, this sucks, I have to pay, or as the woman being like, oh, this sucks, I might get murdered, is like a pretty big imbalance.
Okay, well, just pay less money. I mean, why are you spending $150? I mean, like, a lot of money. And listen, because I understand men have to pay for stuff, and whatever. I get it. It can be annoying, and that's fine. You could talk. I mean, frankly, that I guess you'd be a feminist because you're like, women should start paying equally, whatever. But it sounds like you really needed that $150 for that date, and then she ghosted you. It sounds to me like you're trying to date outside of. If you're taking a girl out to a really expensive date and you can't afford it, the girl's probably they're just not going to resonate with the girl. Maybe you have more realistic expectations of like what you want and what you can get in a relationship. I don't really know what to tell you.
How you guys doing?
Excellent.
My name's Krishna. Thank you all for being here and
bro.
talking through masculinity, what it means to be a man, etc. Obviously, we couldn't fit every man in the country into this room. We tried to get a diverse perspective, but of
You didn't ask me, bro. I'm at least the size of 3 men. So,
course, that caveat, we're not everyone. I wanted to start by telling you why this is something that I'm interested in. I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm seeing him absorb what manliness might mean. I'm thinking to myself, like, what does it mean to be a man? To start, maybe we could just introduce to each other, and if you were to describe what it means to be a man or to be masculine.
My name is Tahoe. I'm a black man from the hood. When I was young, being a man, you had to be tough. You had to be hard. And now, to me, being a man is a lot different. Now,
that's a really good advertisement for Viagra. You have to be tough. You got to be hard. Viagra. Okay.
now to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft. Knowing that you don't always have to run the charge. You can actually listen.
True.
You know what I mean? So
I
things have changed a lot over the course of the years for me.
I'm Griffin.
Are you saying that's a bad thing, or?
You can actually, now to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm so tired of like paying.
It means to be a man. I'd say this is something man maybe
Being a lot different. Now to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft. Knowing that you don't always have to run the charge. You can actually listen. You know what I mean? So things have changed a lot over the course of the years for me.
I'm Griffin, and I don't identify as a man. I'm non-binary.
Why is this person here? Okay, whatever.
I still have elements of, my identity that are masculine, elements that are feminine, elements that don't fall within that range. And
Sure.
I personally just don't feel tied to like the norms or the confines of gender at all.
well, welcome.
My name is Dylan, and I think that the notion of masculinity is just something that can be possessed by man or woman. Man, woman, non-gender conforming person. What it means to be masculine is just like, changing and like very fluid. But I think
Well, that's true. But yeah, no, I agree with that. There's I think that all men and women should be a balance between masculinity and femininity. I believe in strong people in general. Femininity can be very strong, and so can masculinity. Sure. I think a very strong feminine trait is emotional intelligence. I think a very strong masculine trait is a huge cock. No. Sorry, I'm like blanking out for a second. I think a very strong masculine trait, I guess you'd say is leadership in some capacity, or stoicism to an extent. You obviously want to talk to your partner if you get upset and stuff, but there are strong masculine and feminine traits, man. I think that men and women possess them. My wife's a woman. My wife would be considered a more masculine woman than the average status quo. She's got her shit together, but she's very feminine around me. I bring out the woman in my wife, and my wife brings out the man in me. And I think we have a beautiful relationship. So
I think that, masculinity is something that just, like you embody based off just like how you show up in this world as a man and just like, how you go about being your day to day.
How you show up. Interesting.
Yes.
What's up, guys? My name is Paul. I'm a fitness entrepreneur. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 4 years old with my family. It's kind of funny how we're talking about it. My take on masculinity is not about talking as much as doing. I think at its core.
Oh, is that Christian Walker that they got there? Oh my Atlanta. What is happening in this world?
A man has to be efficient, competent, and be willing to do what it takes for themselves and their loved ones.
I was not always a good man.
I think a woman should do the same.
I was not always what you would call a healthy masculine man. And so as my life has changed, I've identified 5 points that I think make a truly masculine man masculine.
Okay.
I think point
Me
number
too.
one is
I used to be kind of a fuckboy, so I don't think that's a good example of a man. So
a man who walks with God. Point number 2 is a man who stands on principle. Point number 3, which is a masculine man, is self-sacrificing. So someone who is willing to sacrifice for point 4, the people that he leads. A true man is a leader. And number 5, a masculine man is never a coward.
That's a lot there.
Yeah.
sure.
Let's get into that as we go on.
I think what it means to be a man is responsibility. As a man, it can come with a lot of power. And with great power comes great responsibility.
Well, Spider-Man. Spider-Man.
That's it.
That's from Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah, that's what
Uncle Ben.
James.
Well, my name is James Killen, former United States Marine, turned Air Force officer. Got a couple combat tours, but I'm also a father of 3 girls who mellowed me out. The idea of masculinity is something that I find interesting because it is changing, and I can actually see those changes in myself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this panel.
Thanks for your service.
Cool.
Andre.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, men. I think my idea of a real man is, someone that gets the
Chuck
job
Norris.
done, and provides and all that. I don't even know what that means.
I love he's just all over the place. Yeah, listen, a real man is just somebody who takes care of their shit. They're respectful, number one. That's a good person. And a lot of this, for me, it's like a moral philosophy. A lot of this stuff can be applied to women too. But real man, takes care of his family. He takes care of his friends. He does the best to be the best person that he can. He leads by example. He tries to be a good person. He always tries to operate in a way that is morally good. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And respect really is number one out of all these things. I mean, it means a lot. That's pretty much it. But you don't have to really identify as like a man or a woman. I'm not saying in a non-binary way, but I mean, that's like my moral philosophy. And a lot of it comes from the Boy Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout. So, all that stuff.
Anymore, but yeah, I don't know. It's changing every day.
How do you think it's changing?
No, it just seems like everything's changing every day. It's like a new world order. So I don't.
New world order. I think it's more, everything's changing every day because that's the world we live in, a place where there's constantly new inventions and technologies being created. Of course, things are going to change every day. But okay, new world order, guys, the Matrix.
But, I have a hard time keeping up with stuff, so I feel like tomorrow it's going to be something else, and people are going to comment and be like, "You're wrong. It's this now."
It is hard to talk about some of this stuff because you feel like
That guy is probably the only really annoying person on the panel so far. He's just obnoxious. Like it feels like bad. It feels like I can't do that. Like, relax. It's not that deep. I understand things are going crazy, and like sometimes you get a little socially policed in a way that can be toxic. But so he's talking about it's obnoxious.
you might say the wrong thing.
I'm not really masculine myself, so I feel like I'm like the wrong person to ask.
Maybe the right person to ask. Christian.
What it means to be a man is to be a adult human male.
That's sort of a very formal definition, but I think that might be a good place to kick off because there's a lot of talk, of writing, of research these days that says there's a crisis in masculinity. Is there a crisis in masculinity? And if so, what is that crisis?
Maybe.
The thing that I see is
I think we have a crisis in general. Maybe you want to call it a crisis. I think we might have like a little bit of a. Listen, I think really our issues. Listen, we people are weaker and weaker every day, and they're taking longer and longer to grow up. What's going on, Grimsy? How you guys doing? I just reacted to one of your videos about Jalen. People are taking longer and longer to grow up. We have an absence of fathers. I think that there are a lot of less than stellar parents out there. It's hard to get a job and to move out of your house as a young adult to be able to experience life without mommy and daddy. We've all been there, which is making it so that things take longer for you to mature and evolve. We have a school system that tries to put you into school over trying to make you successful, instead of advocating for trades and whatnot. We have a pretty fucked area. We have people that are rich not paying their taxes. We have a government that's mismanaging funds. We have so many different problems, and a lot of these issues are very systemic. We're not giving young people the tools they need to survive in the right way. You should be able to get a job that can provide you the ability to live in a house. Okay, we have a fucking housing crisis. This is number one. You should learn to cook, as whether you're a boy or a girl, and clean in school. You should learn how to walk in school. I know it sounds so stupid, but you should learn how to exercise in school. You should be learning proper nutrition in school. You should be taught how to actually take care of yourself as a person. You know, these are the things that we really need to do. We're not really setting up our kids for success, and we need to teach kids to not be so fucking terminally online. You know, they need to have better relationships with technology, because you need technology, because that's the way of the future when it comes to work and whatnot. But at the same time, you need to stop overusing technology, where you're constantly on like different social media platforms, rotting your brain and like setting yourself up for like these weird expectations. I think one of the reasons why we have a lot of young binary women, you know what I mean, and probably men too, but is because what you're constantly seeing these insane beauty standards shot at you on social media that are like super attractive women with no flaws, and it's making young girls feel overly sexualized to the point where they want to not be women anymore, and they want to have a different experience with their gender, which is, I think, is totally valid. It makes perfect sense to me. I just think that we're teaching things wrong in general, you know, just like all these fucking problems. We're just really like we're rotting people's brains. The messages about topics are so insane that I feel like it's causing people to like have these fucking bizarre relationships with themselves. It's just fucking, I don't know, man. It's just too much.
A lot of deconstructing generational trauma. The be a man, boys don't cry, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why we see it as a crisis, because we're actually trying to redefine what it means to be a man, and none of us have any idea because we're just out here trying to be whoever we are.
That's right. I think that historically, being a man was rooted in patriarchy and misogyny.
Damn.
And now we realize how harmful that has been over the years. And so we don't really know how to define where we're supposed to be. And
bro, how is it that the two, in my opinion, strongest men, this guy in the bottom left, this black guy, and this white guy right here, how is it that they are like the probably the best examples of strong men that are somewhat sensitive to like issues? Like you got like, honestly, like usually you get like the man's man, you get like the man's man that comes in and it's like, yeah, we should just keep things the way that they are. But it's like a guy with a bunch of daughters. It's like, yeah, I have daughters now. And like now I'm understanding how the world can be rough for women as a strong man. And I'm starting to learn, which I identify with. Not that I have daughters, but like talking to my wife is radically changed me in a way that I think has made me a better man. And this guy's just like talking about how, like, yeah, man, patriarchy has been fucking us. And I think to an extent, for sure, like a dominating male perspective isn't good. The male perspective is great, but it needs a complement of like a woman's perspective. So,
I think the reason that they're saying it's a crisis is because the box has gotten so small for just being, say, straight, just being a hetero, right? Because if you do anything, women judge you.
What do you mean anything?
If I dance a certain way, or if I wear my hair a certain way, if I dress a certain way, they go, real men don't do that. Real men don't do that.
He's not wrong. That's a good point too. Like women uphold these problems too. It's not just men that are the problem. Women will do it as well. So that's a great thing to point out. It's like if a man if a man acts a little bit feminine, men aren't the only ones that criticize them. Women will criticize them as well. And it's something that we don't talk about, because every time you bring it up, people will be like, well, that's patriarchy. And it's like, okay, but like there are women upholding these issues, and there are young men that are getting bullied by women because they might be a little gay or something in some capacity, or a little less feminine, and it's wrong.
Scared to move a certain way because you don't want to get judged or outed out of the accepted part of your community.
True.
And I think that kind of has us in an uproar, and we don't know where to be. Like, where's the safe place to be for men now? You know what I mean? And it's kind of disturbing.
You know, I was what you would call a toxic masculine male growing up. And I had good men that sewed into me. You know, they gave me good advice, but I never found manhood or never understood my place as a man until one day I humbled myself and I gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm telling you right now.
All right. You know what? God bless you. Okay.
Walking with God changed my life forever.
Can you define toxic masculinity? Like,
I would say toxic masculinity is like what he was just saying, where you're using that leadership role or that aggressive nature in a harmful way to harm other people, to get your way. So the biblical structure for manhood is very humble. It's self-sacrifice. It's not self-motivated.
I guess so. Like, yeah, it's when masculinity goes too far, right? That's really what it comes down to. Like, toxically masculine traits are like when you can't cry or you're gay. And I don't think you should be going and crying to everybody, but like when you can't even confide in a partner because that's gay, you shouldn't be doing that. That's toxic. Those are aspects of toxic masculinity. So shit like that, thinking that like you know better than a woman, prioritizing the male perspective. These are all things that's like toxic masculinity. women can have like a profoundly positive impact on conversations, and so can men, and that's why they need like a mixture of both.
Motivated, but it is motivated by principle and standing on what's right. So there is a clear-cut vision for manhood in the Bible that I live by, and I think our culture used to live by, and I think our culture has lost its way.
I think everybody sort of has a different definition of toxic masculinity. I don't find masculinity toxic in and of itself, but I do believe in bad men, and bad men exist. But does that?
That's not even a dunk on him. He thinks his dad's bad too.
I mean, every man is toxically masculine? No.
We were talking about a crisis on masculinity. I think that there's a lack of understanding there. So it's like masculinity, being masculine isn't toxic. It's just like there are portions of it that you can dive into that make it toxic.
Because I think a lot of what we think of masculinity is tied into patriarchy, right? Which is to say, like, for the longest period of human history, like, men dominated women and got the lion's share of stuff.
I think a lot of times some people make masculinity into a caricature, like it has to be this alpha bro tough guy.
Exactly.
And I find the low-key guy who, you know, is a really great father and a great husband and maybe not like drinking raw eggs every day to be a lot more masculine than the alpha bro who's going and like banging 20 women per weekend and not a responsible man. I find it more masculine to be a good guy.
I think that
I agree with that 1,000%. Honestly, like you don't have to be like a stereotypical, like, listen, I know I'm fat, but it's not hard to get women. Okay, I've never really had a problem, even when I wasn't making a lot of money. Like, I'm a tall, smooth, decent, like, charismatic guy. That's not what makes a man. All right. In fact, I think that fucking rotted my brain and made it difficult for me to like formulate relationships. It's, you know, which is an issue that I don't have nearly as much anymore. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's fucked. You know, you look at somebody who does their best to perform in a job and try to take care of their family. I mean, that's a real man. That's what you're supposed to do. Not go around fucking like 50 girls. Like, what's the point of that? Like, I get it. It's fun, but holy fuck.
Background of this is that we are saying that gender is this like real thing that has real ideas and implications. And Griffin, I'm
I feel like there's too much prompting from this guy.
wondering, as someone who identifies as non-binary, how does this conversation strike you?
Well, I think that it kind of becomes like irrelevant whether or not we attribute like having like a good ethical compass to being like masculine. Attributing that to like the gender constructs which we have made up, which are like somewhat pointless, like kind of just feed into needless roles that uphold the patriarchy without even knowing it. A lot of those things are just things that people should be doing because they're like morally right. Like if you're in a family, you should probably support your family. And I really don't think that it has to do with like your manhood.
These characteristics that we're talking about are baked into an old system of domestic life.
I think that's actually where we get toxic masculinity. Like, none of us can really describe what it is, but we can see it when it happens.
So we learn it, right?
Yeah.
This is something we learned from the world. It's something we learned from like TV and shit. And it's maybe something we learned from our dads too. Tell me about your dad.
I'm a first generation kid.
Couldn't do it.
My dad is from Guyana. Grew up in very humble beginnings, poor family. First time I remember my dad telling me he loved me was when I was 17. And he was like saying like he was proud of me because I was about to graduate high school and things like that, you know. I'm appreciative of all the other things, you know, being present as a provider, but in terms of like, you know, the conversation piece and like, oh, I want to talk to my dad about, you know, sex or something, or I want to talk to my dad about, oh, this person broke up with me and I'm feeling pretty sad about it. I didn't have those conversations.
So like emotional language as part of like how you talk to your dad.
Yeah.
And my definition of manhood came solely from my relationship with God. It didn't come from my father. It didn't come from the good influences around me.
Is God a man?
Yeah, and God is a man.
He is.
And God is a father, and he's a good father. He's a perfect father. And so I think there is a
The Godfather, of course.
clear definition of manhood where I guess that's where I diverge from everyone else in the room. I believe manhood is clearly defined by God. It is the perfect example of what a man should be.
Christian, I see you nodding your head.
I grew up in a divorced home. When you do grow up in a broken home and you don't have a father in the home, you recognize how important sort of both males and females are in raising a child and being in the home.
There's a balance between, you know, masculine energy.
I get that. I mean, I had a very masculine mother, and I had a lot of like a very strong family unit that helped to raise me. I mean, considering how difficult I was to raise, I think my mother did a pretty good job. You know, I'm a fucking a big obnoxious guy that has like ADHD and OCD and a bunch of shit. I was a very behavioral kid. I was tough. My mother was very, very, very blunt with me, I suppose. She did like her best to just fucking raise me to not be a goblin, and I think she did okay. So it can be difficult, but I definitely had like some strong men in my life. So
And feminine energy.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there's both within everybody. And so there's a balance that with masculine energy in itself that I think a lot of people have trouble trying to like reconcile within themselves.
Sure.
Like, yes, being a man, you work hard, you take care of your people, but you got to be able to have that emotional side too, which is where the feminine energy comes in.
Sure.
Y'all just like triggered something in my head when y'all was speaking about having both in the home. To me, I didn't really have it there. And it made me feel a way, but I think that I always wanted one.
True.
And so I wound up at a certain age going outside and trying to find what masculinity was outside. And so I went on the corner, and there were 20 of us on the corner, and none of us had dads. We were all messed up, and so we all taught each other the wrong way to love, to be loved. And then I think in society, there's way more people like that.
And a lot of kids who
True, man. I agree with that. I think that I was just very like fortunate in the way that I was raised. Because my mom was a little emotionally closed off, but overall, I think I learned better than most people. What did I just do? I think I definitely had more resources than most people. I was very fortunate. Like, I always had like a father figure, like my uncle and shit like that, and kind of in my mom as well. I guess I could have used more of a mother figure, if anything, honestly. So yeah.
don't have fathers in the home, excuse me.
No,
look for that father in the world or in a different way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, first, I think that like attributing like proper family values to like a heterosexual couple with children is like just not effective. Like
It's very effective. You're objectively incorrect. I think that what does this do? There's nothing wrong with like not like non-straight like couples. There's nothing wrong with not normal couples. Okay. That's fine. You can still raise a kid with two gay guys or girls or whatever it is. You're still gonna have somebody that tends to lean masculine and feminine, right? You want masculine and feminine figures, but like it is a little bit annoying. But like we don't have to qualify all this every time, do we? We don't have to always be like, well, I don't know. It just feels like annoying. Like it's not pointless. Masculinity and femininity still exist, okay, in the gay community. All right, it's called tops and bottoms. All right, it's a real thing. It's true.
I think that it's obviously like a heteronormative take to be like man and woman and then a child, and that's how you create like a good family. And whether it's like a single mother, single father, or like a queer couple, like I don't think that it's necessary to like attribute men and women to like certain roles. And
Yeah, what are you talking about? Single parents struggle. Like kids shouldn't have single. Like that is a problem. What are you talking about?
household. I think that it's only due to nurture those gender norms that we follow.
Male and female matters. God gives you one of those identities, you take on that role. And now you're...
I don't really think it matters. I think that I think that masculinity and femininity matters, okay? All right? If I was in a gay relationship with a guy, okay, because I'm a guy, I would be the masculine guy. I'd be fucking some femboy, like, or not, or a fem-adult, of course. No, but I would be fucking like a feminine person. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's just my penis. That's how my penis works. There would still be a mixture between masculinity and femininity, okay?
responsible for not or for fulfilling that role. There's a masculine crisis because men are not taking responsibilities for the God-given roles that they have in society. And so when you take away the...
It's interesting how this guy talks. You're going to slowly notice that he's gonna crumble. He originally sounded like he sounded pretty reasonable, and now he's just gonna devolve into like men and women need to do these certain structures. Like he really is like, you know, whereas before he comes off as like regular, but he's just gonna slip.
The need to say God made you this or God made you this, now you don't have to take responsibility for not fulfilling what you were called to do.
When you do that, you also take away other things that somebody else may do. If I have a woman or a partner that wants to take on certain roles and I say, hey, those are my roles that God gave me in society, now I'm suppressing that person. Like at the end of the day, we're all human beings. Yeah, you define who you are and how you behave under God. That's what God gave us, free will. But also like,
bro, this guy's so fucking based because every single time somebody says that, it's somebody that looks like a fucking genderqueer like violin. Like I'm not even trying to be rude, but like the people who are standing up to like this really toxically masculine fucking framing are never like masculine men, and it's about time that like more masculine men like starts like talking against this fucking ridiculous bullshit that's going on.
I think that the religious beliefs should not be used to like dictate how other people identify or how other people live their lives.
Humans need predictability, and when we put each other in these boxes, it gives us the opportunity to make decisions quickly. And I think that's what we're fighting is as a civilization at the moment, is the desire to put 7.5 billion people in specific boxes so that we can have some sort of predictability or
I love you too.
Stability in our lives. I was an emotionally abusive young man in my 20s because I had an idea of what my wife should do. And it caused a lot of stress.
Why were you the way you were?
You know, I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of pent up rage. I had some combat stress that I had to deal with also.
Can't feel that, but I had some anger too. You know, I wasn't always perfect. I always tried to be a good partner, but like, you know, it's hard to not be angry when you're like, you know, one of your parents literally doesn't want you. It's sad, bro. It causes you to have like anger, and it takes a long time to learn how to deal with anger. That's why I talk about when people talk about men and emotions, we always talk about emotions as if anger isn't an emotion, and it very much is. And it's a struggle. and you need to learn how to do it. It's okay to be angry, and that's one thing that, like, when I was learning to control my anger, it wasn't okay to be angry, and it took me a while to learn that it is okay to be angry, but it's not okay to explode, and you have to learn how to process your emotions and your feelings in a more productive way. And when you learn that, it helps balance you, and it's not easy. You know, I've gone through a lot of work to try to figure out the right way to deal with my shit. But like, that's one of the things you got to come to terms with, and that's one of the things where I think feminism gets it a little bit wrong. It's like the positive part is like, yeah, you have to. It's okay for men to be emotional, but the bad part is I feel, and maybe I'm just wrong. Feminism teaches that being angry is wrong. It's not the right emotion to have, but that's a very masculine emotion. Everybody gets angry, but I feel like men tend to turn more towards anger. Women tend to turn more towards I don't know, I guess crying or being upset in some capacity. So, and not that either can't be the other one, but you know, and I was just teach it's okay to be angry. Just don't blow up. You don't need to be breaking shit. You fucking animal.
That I wasn't dealing with because men don't show emotion.
There is a social construct that benefits men. And so the responsibility that I've learned as I've gotten older is learning how to not enforce my power, learning over women, over people.
You're saying that role gives men more
privilege,
like an advantage and privilege. I'm saying that it is more self-sacrificing. I do not have free time. I do not have hobbies. I do not wake up during the day.
That's sad. Why wouldn't you want to split equally with your spouse or your partner? Like, I don't have free time or hobbies. That's bad. You should be both. If you are in a relationship where one person has free time and hobbies and the other person doesn't, then the other person who has time for things should be sacrificing more of their time to split the workload. But being a man isn't about doing everything and developing resentment for your spouse because you don't let them do anything. Okay, you need
Camiel super chatted $5. The based content we needed.
True.
Far better than Red Pill garbage.
Based. Anyway, like, oh, these are gonna explode. Like I was saying, if one partner's like, this is a problem. If one partner's pulling a lot of weight and the other one isn't, then there needs to be more communication so they can split the workload in a better way. Okay, because that's just going to lead to developing resentment, and then you're going to have a very unhealthy, unsatisfying, and unhappy relationship.
And do what I want to do ever.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about my wife, my kids, my business.
But that's your decision, and that's not like a mandatory thing of your masculinity.
Well, if you believe that God is true.
I think I'd fuck them, though. This person here. They're not bad looking. They're feminine enough for me. You know what I mean? Not that anybody needed to know that. I'm married, but, you know. Oh, this is, we come here to overshare, so.
True. And you believe that he is God, then you do have that responsibility.
What privilege are you referring to? Like, what privileges do men have?
We've constructed this entire society to benefit us.
There are privileges and disprivileges, brother. Like, yeah, as a man, generally speaking, for one, you're going to be valued based on your accomplishments more than your looks. When it comes to male-dominated spaces, people are going to think that you're more capable a lot of the times. As a man, I have thought women are less capable, but like, you don't even realize it. This is the problem. People think it's so active. And I tell this story where I was at the bus, when I was at the bus company, and it was the responsibility of my female boss to organize the buses in a way, because it was going to snow the next day, organize the buses in a way where it was easy to remove them, right? I know this sounds so silly, but basically there's like parking spots in the bus the bus area. You know, there's like, oh, let's say there's a parking area over here, there's a parking area over here, and there's a parking area over here. We wanted everything to be in one area instead of like parked parked in like rows of 8. So you'd have like, you know, however many rows of 8 to 10. So that when it snows, you just have to shovel around it or whatever, and then you pull the buses out and then you can just plow. That's pretty much what it was. And there was a woman running it. Sometimes it was a woman, sometimes it was a man, depending on, you know, who was working that day. When my woman boss would be there, I'd be like, don't worry about it, stay inside, I'll take care of everything. You know what I mean? Like, you don't even really realize it, but it's because she was a woman. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you want to be chivalrous, but and on one hand, that's like that you could see that as a privilege for women, because maybe women won't have to do as much work. But then at the same time, it's also like an ego hit to a woman, because you're saying that like, oh, you're not needed. Like, I can handle this without you. So yeah, there's just a lot of there's pros and cons, man, to being a woman than being a man. And that's really what it comes down to.
Break it down. Like, what privileges exactly?
Yes, women cannot park. Let me just tell you something, okay? The women are terrible at parking. I'm just kidding. Old people can't park. Let me fucking tell you. Okay, one of the guys I worked with was walking behind the buses as they were parking and almost fucking died. So, as an idiot. Anyway, Yeah.
Like we talk about the wage gap, or if you look at Roe versus Wade, men controlling women's bodies.
Even if there might be those privileges, there's also more men who commit suicide, more men incarcerated.
Sure. I mean, so first of all, there are more women attempt suicide than men. I think the reason that men will commit suicide more, for one, you could obviously say is like, society doesn't care as much about men's struggles, maybe. But you could also say it's because men use more lethal ways to take their own lives. Like women will use pills, which is something, but men will literally shoot themselves in the fucking head. Which one do you think is a higher success rate? Probably the shotgun blast through your fucking skull. That's really what it comes down to. Women are generally focused more on vanity, so that when they take their life, they don't want, like, they want to still look nice in the casket and stuff. Men just looking for an out. You could definitely talk about how there are more men like that are homeless and on the street and this and that, and it is definitely a problem. There are inequalities, for sure. But I think it's just unproductive to compare which ones are harder, and to really just focus more on like how he could solve the problem.
I think when you talk about like incarceration rates and things like that, like things that men are a victim of, I think that it's important to like recognize, like, I don't think that men are oppressed solely on the grounds that they're men. I think that men like experience oppression based on like the intersections of their identities, which is, why we see like different like lower class jobs being worked by men, or like higher suicide rates, or like incarceration rates going up, because like men, like black men, brown men, indigenous men, queer men, trans men, etc.
Yeah, non-normal men, sure.
Those people like face oppression, they experience oppression, but it's not solely due to their identity as a man.
But I think dating and sex is probably a very interesting place.
I understand what he's saying. He's saying that like men struggle, but not because they're men. They struggle because like there are struggles in the world. Maybe. There are expectations for men to succeed more than women. I'd say that there are some male struggles. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because we just have to say, hey, here's a struggle that men tend to deal with, and here's how we can solve it.
Ways to think about this, because it's changing field
Like
as far as
already.
like what people expect of each other.
I date in New York City a lot, and dating-wise, there's a lot that's like asked of a man. Like first dates are like nightmares.
I got a question. Yeah.
Dude, it's like, I'm like, what do you want? They got like a checkbox, like, are you gonna pick me up? Are you gonna walk on the outside of the sidewalk? Are you gonna open the door? Are you gonna pull out the seat? Are you gonna pay for the meal? Are you gonna be interesting during the day?
Find the better women. Like there are bad men and women. Just find better women. Like, oh, all these women are this and that. Find better women. Talk to better women. You're probably going after fucking thoughts that you find very like they're very like shallow. Find better women, because you're probably not a prize yourself.
Dinner, are you gonna be funny during the dinner? And then when you walk home, are you gonna drop me off? Are you gonna watch me walk inside? And then are you gonna text me after? And it's like trying to defuse a bomb. Like if you think you're like red wire, blue wire, and you're like one little thing and you're just done. And
It's not true. You're not. If you turn them off with one, if you're having a consistent problem when it comes to dating, you're probably the problem. Okay, like I understand that everybody has bad dates. I've had bad dates before, but if you're constantly running into an issue, then you're not going after the people that you need to be going after. You're not dating correctly. Like you're probably going after women that are very attractive to you, that fit like, and obviously you want to date attractive women, but like fit like a particular beauty standard. And like they're probably fucking girls who can go fuck a guy that's 20 years older than them for money. Go talk to a regular person. Go to a library. Stop meeting girls at clubs. How about that? Go to a fucking library, okay?
it's like I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm so tired of like paying $150 for a first date.
Why would you
And
pay
then you
that
just
much?
ghost me. And the next week I'm like hurting for cash. I'm like, I could have really used that $150. Like, why did I have to?
So stop making those bad decisions. Like literally just pay for sex at that point. If you're spending $150 on a fucking dinner, go buy a prostitute and have sex and go work on money. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like this is insane.
You know what I'm saying?
The trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, this sucks, I have to.
Oh no, did they get me? Okay, so midstream, Vice took down my stream. It's weird because they'll like take down a stream if you're reacting to a Vice video, but like you could still upload the reaction. So I don't know. Anyway, let's continue.
I have to. You know what I'm saying?
The trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, this sucks, I have to pay, or as the woman being like, oh, this sucks, I might get murdered, is like a pretty big, imbalance.
On a first date, should the man or whoever identifies as the man on the date pick up the check? Show of hands. Who thinks?
I mean, listen, I personally would, based on the way that the dating market is. Like, yeah, it falls onto the guy to pay. It kind of is what it is. Is it 100% fair? Probably not. You could always say like you want to mutually pay. I'd say, maybe you go there. If it's a bad date, you make them pay half. Yeah, I mean, there's one of the benefits of being a woman. Usually you get a free meal. And benefits of being a man or other things, So yeah.
Things yes.
Yeah, should is a weird.
But you don't have to.
Yeah, should's a weird way to put it.
Okay, sorry. How would you put it?
I very much love gender roles. I like masculine men, and I want my masculine man to pick the check up. My friends seem to be the same. My girlfriends seem to want that as well. But I have a male friend who was naturally doing that, and with the dates he was going on with women, they were offended that he like took the check. So I think like,
really, I've never had that before. Okay.
hey, if this woman doesn't want him to pay and she wants to show, she can pay, go off.
I think it's a matter of preference. Like, you know, if someone picked it up for you, like you develop a kind of rapport, respect with that person. Like, so be it. If the other person, you know, the woman you're with doesn't want that, then maybe it's not the match for that person. So I think it's dependent on the situation.
I think that there's such a thing as financial abuse. And men seem a lot of time because they spend that a woman has to be under them or owes them something.
I think that's when it gets toxic.
Interesting. I like this guy. He's fucking banging me out. Yeah. So like when he said financial abuse, I was thinking that like some women overly depend on men sometimes in a way that can be like kind of toxic. I saw a TikTok before. I wish I saved it, of like this wife, like, you're gonna pick up the check, and he's like, I pay literally every other bill. You can pick up the check without trying to shame me. And it's like, yeah. But what he's saying is that like some men, and I think that it happens more often than not, something that I think is changing every day. But there are men who will pay for a date and then expect like, oh, well, I paid, so you have to have sex with me, or you have to do this, and you have to do that. And it's kind of one of the narratives when it comes to like sexual assault culture. Not every man does that. I've never done that. I don't think that any of my viewers watching will feel that way, because you should operate of like, you know, you pay for a date. It's a chance to potentially sleep with that person or be with that person. Also, again, guys, don't be spending $150 on a date. All right, half apps at Applebee's is that's perfectly reasonable. Okay, but yeah, that's true. There is a sense of entitlement from some people because they pay. They feel like they should be able to do everything, or they should, like, they're superior. It's the same with men who will pay to have their, basically will work while their wives stay at home. They feel entitled to like everything. And let me be explicit. Obviously, if you're a stay-at-home parent, you should be doing most of the stay-at-home work, like the cooking, the cleaning, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that like the parent can't chip in every once in a while. The other parent like helping out in some capacity, like helping take care of the kid and stuff. And it doesn't mean that you should hold it over somebody. That's where the biggest issue comes in, when you start holding it over people.
Me personally, I love to take care of my partner. I love that feeling that I give them, that they're taken care of when they're with me. And that's when it's with friends, anybody. If you're with me, I got you.
Like, I guess what I'm hearing from you, Andre, is that there's like a lot of pressure to inhabit the masculine side of the social expectation. And yet you might not get the benefit that you would have expected generations ago. And that puts you in a weird position.
Yeah, well, we live in a city where there's 8 million people, and a lot of these girls, especially if you're really attractive, guys are hitting on them all day. So they feel like celebrities. You got so many options. I don't blame you. I'd be the same way.
Yeah, well, see, again, I think I said this earlier. I don't remember because, the stream, whatever. But this is the thing, is that like some people like don't date outside of your attractiveness level. If you're like, listen, if you're dating a girl who's more attractive than you, of course, they might be just conning you for a free meal. And that's not right. But it's the reality. And listen, part of the fuckboy game, when I used to there was times where I would sleep with women who were less attractive than me because it's easier. They're like, wow, this guy's like hot. And I know I'm fat, guys. It's okay. But I'm still an attractive guy. Wow, this guy's hot. They would, they'd want to sleep with me. They want to hang out with me. They want to be with me. And, I would be upfront with them about how I wouldn't want to be in a relationship. And I guess women do the same thing, but for food. They're like, all right, this guy will take me out to eat. So that's like your female version of a fuckboy. It's not right, guys. Don't do that, okay? I used to be a dog. I'm not proud of myself. But, it's kind of the game sometimes, unfortunately. I think that it's interesting because I did come across Destiny, mentioned this in a video once. I thought it was very interesting. I've been like kind of thinking about it. But where a lot of people are, especially younger people, are just inconsiderate. I think a lot of our problems just come from people being very inconsiderate. Very interesting point. I was like, well, okay. And I've been sitting on it for a little bit. And I think that I'm starting to, it's starting to make sense. It sounds so too simple to be true, but I think that is like a true thing. Like using a guy or a person in general for free food is very inconsiderate, and then fucking ugly people because you know that they'll fuck you is very inconsiderate. Okay. It's shitty. It's not like you're not a horrible person, but it makes you, it's not good. You should be a better person. And then you get older and you realize that it's like, oh, I wish I didn't do that.
Becomes
Like somebody better.
I think technology has a big part to do with that now. Like modern times, like online dating, Instagram.
Sure.
Especially as a girl, you're gonna have 30 DMs a day.
Yeah, the
You know what I'm saying?
DMs.
Swipe it up on your
I think
picture.
What are the girls you're going for that are just getting so many DMs a day? Like most people are just not engaging in this. Like maybe I am just old, but I feel like there are definitely girls that get like 30 DMs a day, but maybe just like keep your sights on a girl like of level of your attractiveness level, you know?
That's a big reason why it can be tougher for some men.
Not successful.
I think what he's saying is
He's not successful.
there's a toxicity to femininity as well.
Sure.
There is a
There can
toxic
be.
side to both genders.
There can be.
I
for
think,
both
I think
sides.
anybody can be narcissistic, but I think that it's like weird to randomly attribute that to like women in New York because they're being complimented all day.
There's a term, it's called absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, but that is, when we talk about masculinity, that's what we've had. We've typically had that. We can do whatever we want, and we do it because we squeeze, we corrupt, we take, historically, you take over things, places that you don't like, and you rape the women, and you take the gold, and,
Right,
you do what you want because you have that power. Now when we see women have that power, we're like, whoa, she's literally just getting a taste of the power that men have had for centuries.
Oh shit, this guy's base. Okay, so the way I'm interpreting this is more of like part of the criticism for the dating market, okay, is valid and part of it's not. Let's call it 50-50 just for the sake of ease. There's a level excuse me, there is a level of like women having a benefit in the market in some capacity, right? But then there's also times where it's just like women are starting to get equal footing and people are angry about that. You know, it's like guys will be like, oh, it's ridiculous. Women will work. Women don't have to be with, like, women are more selective now. Part of the reason is because they have their own jobs, so they don't have to be with a guy just so that they can survive. And like people will complain about that. And you see a lot of the manosphere like, oh, I wish women didn't have jobs anymore. You know, oh, we should go back to traditional roles. They'll say like that because they would like to have the woman under their foot. That's a significant power dynamic because they're lazy and don't want to actually respect women as an equal.
But on the flip side of this perspective,
Not all of them, but
of dating, of like the poor guy who goes on these dates and gets ghosted, and it's a struggle to date. On the other side of that is men have more sex, men cheat more, they have more affairs. So if I'm a woman and I'm looking for a guy, I would be really selective. I would have a list of what I was looking for, and the guy would have to meet those standards, and they would be high.
I think over the last several years, the Me Too movement has given a lot of insight.
Because that's what happens, bro. Like, you know, especially when you got the fuckboy guy going around fucking these girls, disappointing them, then they're like, they get very upset, so they start to set their standards higher, you know,
into what women are feeling in the workplace, what they're experiencing, how they're being abused and otherwise silenced, how institutions of power have kept them silent. And we've heard some really awful stories and some terrible shit. I want to hear from you guys what you think about what the Me Too movement did. Has it gone too far?
I mean, the Me Too movement was good. It's a really good conversation about, like, you know, the workplace dynamics and whatnot, and men putting women into positions, and some women putting men into positions as well, and some men putting men into positions, and some women putting women. But it's mostly men perpetrating. I hope that's the right word. And it was great. I think that there are areas where it could go a little bit too far, where like now everything's Me Too. When it comes to like the internet, you know, people will mutually engage with each other. And then all of a sudden it'll go wrong. They'll be upset afterwards, and all of a sudden they'll just be like, "Oh, this person like raped me or forced me to do this." Now it's somewhat acceptable to just do stupid shit like that. You know, it's still overall positive movement, because there are people, especially in the real world, who get like sexually assaulted and who end up getting like the shit end of the stick, and it's like, what a horrible thing to suffer through. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's gone too far like most things, but like it's still necessary, and the conversation needs to be about like calling out the goes too far part while still maintaining the understanding of, you know, it's a very important movement. So
what does it mean for you?
I think it's good for women to expose men who are doing evil things in the workplace. I think it's been a good thing in exposing sexual abuse. There's also the opposite side of that coin where women are allowed privilege to do certain things that men are not. So in the workplace, I was working at a place where a woman was grabbing me inappropriately, doing things that were inappropriate. And when you bring that up to your coworkers, you know what they say? They laugh and they say, you should be excited.
they might, but you could, I mean, like, it depends on your business. He's not wrong. It depends on the business. Like, I guess, depends on what business you're at and what the business culture is. Like, I know at my former job, if let's say some girl was, you know, whatever, some of my bosses, they're older men, they might have been like, oh, who cares? Why do you care, kid? But if I was like, no, I want to go to HR with this, they would have to write it up, you know? So that could depend on your workplace culture. For sure, that's a problem as well. I would say that it's not happening nearly as much, but sure, that's not good. That's an issue as well.
Right? So if a man is sexually abused, the stigma totally changes.
Well, I don't think Me Too necessarily is what prevented people from believing you and your story. And your story is...
And Me Too is about guys and girls. So
like, I'm not here to suppress that, but I do think that like it's worth noting women are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault.
You just experienced a little bit of weakness that women feel most of the time.
When we're talking about constructs, you guys are saying we need to deconstruct masculinity. I'm saying there are unequal biases with both genders.
Sure.
When it comes to it not necessarily being as viewed as valid, it happens to be the case because of other men, though. You know what I'm saying? Like other men are the people that downplay that, and that's where we come back to the talk of
Sure, but like so I don't like getting into this speech necessarily because it's like the all men speech. And you're right, but men and women both uphold this issue. If a woman is sexually assaulting, or I don't know, I always call it sexual harassment if they're like grabbing your butt or whatever. But whatever, if they're sexually harassing you and the guys around you are like, oh, who cares? It's very clear that both men and women in this situation are complicit because the number one bad person is the woman, touching you inappropriately. So, but yeah, I mean, it's true. This can happen. I don't think, I think that's what the Me Too movement is about. It's not just about women. It's about everybody, right? Like Brendan Fraser, he was like what would you say, molested, assaulted. I mean, he had his butt grabbed by like an executive. And then when he asked like for an apology, he got blacklisted, right? That's definitely part of it. And now he's finally been able to come out and be like, yeah, this happened. It was horrible. It really messed him up.
Patriarchy and things like that
was put in place by men and is enforced by men.
Oh, and I went for a walk.
Enforced by men and women, but yeah, for sure.
To get dinner last night. And I walked several blocks because I wanted to check out a few things. And it was dark. Not a single time did the idea that I would be physically or sexually assaulted cross my mind. Not a single time.
That's good.
I can imagine that doesn't really work out for women.
Yeah, it's not the same. Like I wouldn't even let my wife walk around like at night outside by herself, like at all. Never.
It comes down to biological differences. As a man, you're more likely to be able to have more of a chance to fend off someone attacking you. As a woman, not really.
Yeah. Also, most people who rape are men, and men are usually attracted to women, so they'll want to rape women. But yeah, that's true.
So that's why, we have things like mace and tasers or having a gun.
Is it something about it's hard to admit that you're a victim?
Yeah, for sure.
And to complain about it. People look at you like, remember Terry Crews? He didn't get his nuts squeezed and shit?
Right. It's like, why didn't you do something? Why'd you let him?
Look how the world ridiculed him. Oh, you ain't do nothing. Like, oh, you a bitch. So we as men, especially super guys that grew up in super masculine houses, we don't really like to admit weakness.
Well, and it's in our language, right? Like, don't be a bitch. Like, don't be a pussy.
Right.
Like, it's
true.
Very real.
We internalize that.
Yeah. But that's all examples of like toxic masculinity. Like, it's never to.
Okay, but we don't need to. Like, okay.
Validate somebody's experience, but like it must be obvious that like these are rules and roles enforced by men and created by men.
Okay, so these rules and roles were created by men and women. I mean, they were probably created by biology, and because if you look at animals, they have a particular hierarchy, right? Just based on their natural characteristics, or humans. So we have critical thought. So these things have changed as time goes on. Women definitely get the shit end. Women also definitely uphold it. Overall, though, it doesn't really matter. The problem is that the problem exists, and both people uphold it in different ways. And I think it's more constructive to just focus on the issues rather than to focus on I don't know. Sometimes it gets very man versus woman. It's like, oh, we have an issue of men. Well, that's men's fault. Or we have an issue with women. Oh, it's like, maybe we could just talk about, here's these issues. Oh, cool. How could we solve that? So when we talk about how men are expected to hold it in when they get like some kind of injustice onto them, maybe we were just like, yeah, that is shitty. We should make more comfortable spaces for people to come forward and teach other men mostly, but other women as well, to create comforting spaces for them to be able to be like, yeah, this was shitty. Like I had a gay guy who I was good friends with, and he used to constantly touch me, like on my balls and my penis area. And he was a nice guy, and to this day, he's still a nice guy. I mean, like, hot take. He was like kind of lonely, and nobody really wanted to be with him. And he was a cool guy. He was a good friend, and he kept like touching me, and like it was really uncomfortable. And I had to get to a point where I was like, yo, you have to stop. I don't consider myself a victim at all. I wasn't scared. I was just annoyed, and I had to get to a point where I had to get physical with him. People should be able to talk about those experiences for sure, but he wasn't a horrible guy. I mean, I guess that's too much of a hot take. It's just kind of a fucking lonely person, I guess. But if it was a woman and he was doing that to them, I mean, that would be a very scary experience probably, because they wouldn't be, I'm also 6'4", I'm a pretty big guy, so... But,
Well, and toxic masculinity and power kind of go hand in hand. I mean, we're talking about peanut butter and jelly.
You know what it is? I think sometimes we got to go to work, and like if we're caught complaining about it, we're like admitting weakness. It's like, you're not a man.
How does that feel?
It doesn't feel great, but that doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do. If you talk about a little bit of pressure that goes with it, yeah, there's a little bit of pressure. If you can withstand it, you become a successful man.
But what does that have to do with being a man? Like, Surely, like a woman can do all those things, so why even attribute it to your gender?
That's a good point, but I think also if you're talking in terms of biological differences,
I feel like they cut this part up really weird. I don't really understand. I feel like it kind of went a weird direction.
generally men are more logical, right? More reasoning, more
maybe
I
factual
disagree.
based.
There's no scientific backing for that whatsoever.
I don't know. Men and women tend to think differently with different factors. Maybe you want to say women tend to think more with an empathetic or emotional factor, which I would agree with. But like I don't think that makes women unable to make decisions, or in a bad way. I think that a good balance of men and women making decisions is always good. But okay.
I just think it's a commonly used stereotype. I mean, I'm
So
not.
It's like, what's the point of saying that? You know?
You're talking about, okay, you guys can say that. I think more about me. Like, I'm more of like a logical, factual based guy. Like, I have emotions.
Okay.
But I don't let that deter me from what I need to do, like my reasoning.
Do you talk with people about your emotions a lot?
I mean, I have friends. I have close guy friends I can talk to.
You do?
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing came out where like guys these days have fewer than 3 friends. Like it's hard for men to make friends with each other.
I think that's a big problem now.
I feel like everybody struggles to make friends nowadays with like our social media, even women. I don't really have friends. My wife's like my best friend, and I'm not even upset about it. I'm just like, oh, I don't really care for friends. Maybe I'm just like a very reclusive person, but
in modern times, because you hear about the suicide rates going up. I think that's a big reason for it. Men aren't allowed to talk about it with safe people. So if you talk about masculinity crisis, that's the crisis right there.
I think that men find friends very easily in terms of like, oh, you lift 240, I'm 242, let's like spot each other like basketball or whatever. But I think that we have superficial relationships in those friendships, in which like it's very like surface level, like coming back to what you're talking about. We don't talk about feelings and things like that. That comes back to how, you're brought up and how like boys are taught in certain ways, how we go about talking to each other and how we go about expressing ourselves.
How much of this is men putting ourselves in a little box? I can tell you, I wouldn't have shared my emotions with people when I was younger, but I have people in my life now who I feel completely comfortable sharing my insecurities, my vulnerabilities, how I'm feeling. That ends up being one of the reasons why men end up with limited friends. Because, I mean, how many people can you actually feel like you can be open and honest with?
But there's something holding people back.
Yeah, and I think it's us. I think we're doing it because we're putting ourselves in this masculinity box, if you will.
I think that vulnerability for men oftentimes is viewed as surrender, and like that is that's an example of weakness in which like someone can possibly take advantage of it, or it used to be viewed as such, where it's like, all right.
Yeah, I get what he's saying there. I think that there are some people that'll take advantage of somebody else, like if it's in like a relationship context. And it happens with both sides where you go confide in your partner and sometimes they'll use it against you. And that usually means that that's somebody you shouldn't be with, right? So you could look at the silver lining and be like, oh, well, I shouldn't be with them. But yeah, that happens. It makes it difficult to build. Like I said, I also think that like there's a lack of, you're losing, like you have half a parent, a lot of people. So it also makes you feel like you can't confide in a lot of people because of that as well. You're kind of missing that whole thing. I'm sure that has like a negative impact on your ability to build relationships just in general when it comes to trusting other people. So like at levels of anger, etc.
All right, cool. Like he cried, oh, that means he's soft, so now I can challenge him.
And this is something that I really struggle with. As a black man that grew up in the hood, you couldn't be soft. Yeah. You couldn't come outside. You know what I'm saying? So you had to take on this persona in order to be a quote unquote man. As I got older, I realized I still had to do that with women. I had to be a certain way for them to look at me as a man. And if I didn't perform in that manner, they also called me a bitch.
Yeah, they want a real like
right.
Yeah.
So it's like, as progressive as I may want to be, is the world accepting of that as a whole? Because
for my thing, I think that like I like this guy because he's like a strong man who's like a little bit, but like also values like I guess you'd say femininity and emotion. Like emotional intelligence. That's how I think a man should be. I think people in general should probably be like that. Like strong people that understand empathy and whatnot. So it's just unfortunate when those expectations are like too high for people where it causes them to not really be able to comfortably express themselves in a healthy way.
Because even if the other men don't like it, but the women like it, I might be like, I don't care what the guys think, as long as the women like it. But there are spaces where the women will be like, look at him, he wants a finger in his butt. Sorry.
No, let's talk about fingers in the butt.
You know what I'm saying?
I wonder if that's code for being more feminine or if you actually want to finger the butt. Because listen, man, I'm at a point now, I'm older now. I had like, there was a point where like I had a phase where like I could do a finger in the butt. Not so much anymore. It's just I had a phase where I was into it, and the girl I was with was like chill about it, but then we broke up, and then I just never really wanted to explore it anymore. But if you like a nice finger in the butt, like it is what it is. I mean, that's fine. I think that pegging goes a little too far, in my opinion, a little too gay. But hey, listen, do what you want to do behind closed doors. God bless you. You know.
Yeah, like
I guess God put the fucking G spot up your ass for a reason, huh?
that's not my type of guy. He's not my type of guy, and I can't be open with sex or accepting having gay friends. Pardon, you know.
That's what you like?
But I can't. Right. You can't be open about certain things because then you become questionable and you're pushed out of the safe space.
You know, sex is a difficult thing for men to talk about, even with each other, especially if you do have some kind of kink.
Because
I wonder what they mean by that, because I think I feel like men talk about sex a lot, but I think I understand the context. Like men will talk about like, oh, I fucked this bitch, blah blah blah. But I guess in the context of expressing some kind of, like they're saying, like a kink or some kind of comfortability, or like, oh, I like this, you know. Me personally, I don't give a fuck, like, you know, but I'm a little different. I just don't give a shit. I'll just say like any random things, and usually people find it entertaining because I say it in a funny way. But
you're not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to be weak. You're not allowed to fail. And a lot of people that when you say the suicide rates, you give up because you have nowhere to turn.
I kind of disagree with you on the fact that pressure is causing. I think it's more the lack of support and guidance for a lot of guys. Like they don't know where to turn. Like a lot of guys, you know, suicide I think is like when you lose hope, right? So they just don't have hope.
Sure. What about not wanting to go get it? Because there's places to be. There's people to go. You can go to church.
I mean,
you can go to therapy.
As
There's
much as
places
you
to
say
go.
that, but I don't feel like, you know, when you say guys don't want to express weakness, I think taking that step is hard for a lot of men. Because
I just want to be very clear. I think that men and women struggle in a similar way when it comes to like mental health issues. I understand more men take their lives. So we said it before, but women attempt more. I think men are just more successful because obviously we're just better at everything. But realistically, like we'll choose more lethal methods to take our own lives. It's unfortunate. There's definitely imbalances in different ways, right? I mean, like we have more homeless men, et cetera, et cetera. You know, but women also get catcalled more, and they have more of a reason to just kind of like generally fear for themselves. I don't think it's necessary to compare. But I just want to be like explicitly clear, like men and women struggle with mental health issues. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media setting up like unrealistic expectations for people's lives. And like it again, the difficulty of being able to live on your own because of like a system that's fucking us. People are getting underpaid. They're getting overworked. And they're able to afford affordable housing, even though they should be able to afford it. So
then that expresses weakness. It's hard for a lot of guys.
You know what's interesting? That what I'm hearing is that as men, you also are victimized by the sexist expectations of masculinity.
It also makes it hard for men to love themselves and love themselves enough to understand that they're in trouble. You know, and I know that's something that happened in my life. It was before I did finally go to therapy and get the demons out that I needed to get out. It took me meeting a woman who actually made me want to love myself.
You found a woman.
That's fair. I can respect that.
Who gave you peace and changed you a lot.
That's my wife. Yeah.
Great. If a man is dating a woman and she doesn't like that he's not masculine enough, it's kind of like, to me, I feel like too bad for him. He should go find someone else. That's part of the dating scene. Everyone has things that they like and things that they don't like.
That's a good
I
point.
feel like your preference is your preference, but at like some point I think it's like noteworthy and responsible to like understand where those preferences or like originate.
Well, listen, here's my thing with the preference. There's nothing wrong with the preference as long as you don't shame other people. So let's say you're a woman and you like a really masculine man, okay? And you really want to get beaten, and I'm just kidding. But like, that's totally fine as long as you're not shaming people for not being what you think they should be, right? So if you're like, yeah, if you go on a date with a guy and let's say he's like less masculine than you would like, and you're like, oh, it was a nice time, and then you just respectfully part ways. You don't have to shame him for his existence. It's just a non-compatibility issue. That's where the issues come in, right? And it happens with women a lot, like especially fat women get a lot of shit on the internet, right? So it's because guys aren't attracted to fat women, at least not publicly. They'll jerk off to fucking BBW porn all day and all night, but they won't admit it. But they don't like overweight women. So instead of just like keep it to themselves and be respectful, they decide they're like, oh, you're disgusting, you're fat, you're just a fucking animal, et cetera, et cetera. That's why body positivity exists, because people bully the shit out of fat women, right? So it's true. It might be going too far, like everything else, but that is where the origins of it are. You know, it's just about being respectful when it comes to your preferences.
Not necessarily. I think our life experiences form what we really want in our dating life. And because I grew up in a broken home and I didn't have a man in the house, I want a man who gives me security and protection. I don't think me deconstructing masculine is gonna do that for me. I was missing that in my childhood, and that's what I want in a man.
I tend to
I don't think it needs to be that deep. I don't think we have to like deconstruct. I mean, it doesn't need to be that deep. Just be respectful and like, yeah, like what you like.
diverge from like the Freudian daddy issue stuff when it comes to like what people like.
Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. I want a man who gives me security.
Thank you.
I think
Freud.
if I'm with a woman,
That's so funny, bro. I'm fucking Christian Walker's going fucking goblin mode. You gotta love him. I love it. My new laugh is so weird because I've been having like weird voice issues. I have to try to like laugh normally again. But yeah, no, man. Listen, people having daddy issues is part of their people's life. I have daddy issues. My wife has daddy issues. They manifest differently because I'm a man, she's a woman, and we need that in each other. I don't think that there should be more fatherless children. I'm gonna work to not have that by being there for my children. But yeah, it's just kind of part of life.
and the bad dates I've had is when I'm like talking about my problems, I'm complaining about something. I'm not gonna see that woman. If I'm projecting more strength and I'm more charismatic,
I don't know. Then either you're lying or you're giving too much information out, or you're dating like really shitty women. I've never really had a problem like venting to women at all, for the most part. Like I've had women use shit against me. I think it happens to everybody. I don't internalize that and make it a woman issue, but yeah, I mean, like, just don't divulge too much, or maybe don't talk about yourself too much. Sometimes people will just like complain, but they'll only talk about themselves. I don't know, but
I'm positive. I'm probably gonna see that woman. So I think as much as like guys, you want guys to be vulnerable, that doesn't work a lot of times. And I think it just comes down to that.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what it is.
That's what I'm saying.
And it sounds like a lot of you are saying that's wrong.
I'm
Yeah,
not saying
and it's
wrong.
like-
I'm not saying
it's like-
wrong. I think it is what it is.
I just think that society teaches you have to be a certain way.
And that's really
And that's my issue. Because
Right.
if this is who you are, your character, right, it just blossoms into this person that loves to pay for dates, loves to open doors, and loves to walk in the house, then that's fine. But when society tells you that from a young boy, that that's the only way to be as a man, this is the only way to be. And you think about things like, say, people on the down low that don't want to come out till later because they're scared of societal pressures, right? You should be able to be whoever you want without society telling you you have to be this way in order to fit in this box.
sure, I agree.
Pressure is on like the body. Like pressure is to be buff, to like look good.
There is.
So first of all, like, yeah, there are male beauty standards. I will say though that I think the biggest male beauty standard that hurts men is not really necessarily being buff. I think it's penis size. I think it's porn. When you look at porn, every guy has a fucking schlong dangler, and I think it makes a lot of guys insecure. I think that like there's a lot of guys who are growers and not showers, and they feel like because when they're flaccid, they're not rocking a fucking 7-incher. They feel shitty about themselves. I do think that part is definitely part of it as well. But I think that's when it comes to body image issues for men, I think penis size is much more big of a deal. We really should normalize, like, understand that women, like, not all women like really big dicks. I think most women like a pretty average sized one, as long as you can sling it correctly. There are girls who like really big penises. I've slept with them before, and like they're open about it after, or even before that. Like, yeah, I like big dicks. Like, well, I don't really have one, but it's like, all right, we could fuck. Like, it's just because they're just looking at whatever, and it's a decent length for both of us, but like, it's obviously not like what they wanted. It's whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But I think that's where the biggest insecurity comes from.
A certain pressure, I
For
guess
men.
you can call it, for guys to look a certain way, especially if they're trying to attract women. So I think it comes down to just men who look a certain way tend to look more competent. They can protect.
I was just gonna add on to what you were saying. If a guy looks fit, if a guy looks strong, okay, as a girl, she's probably thinking, if I'm on the street and somebody tries to do something to me, I know that he can handle it.
That's probably part of it. Also, part of it's just probably like, oh, they put work into their body, like they look good. You know what I mean? Like, they put like, listen, I'm fat, and again, the fattest I ever was when I was working like fucking 60+ hours a week. But there is a stereotype, which makes sense, that goes along with being fat, which is like you're lazy, right? So I think that's part of it as well.
I also think
And it goes both ways.
generally, like, guys who don't have the body that they're looking for, or generally they're not as healthy. It's not just a look thing, it's just a health thing.
Yeah, that's
the body and mind are connected. If someone is strong, they're probably gonna look strong, and they're probably gonna feel strong. So I think when you say it's a pressure, I think it can be construed as a healthy pressure. Hey, get strong, be strong, because you're gonna be a healthier and more mentally fit individual.
Sure. I mean, there's a good argument there. Like, it's a healthy pressure. That's a good point. Like, there's healthy stressors in life. It should be like not too much stress that you can't recover from it. So like it's good to be like, yeah, you should look better, right? Like I don't think so. That's the good conversation about like beauty standards, realistic versus unrealistic. That's a good conversation, right? So being like morbidly obese, you don't have to be that, but not everybody can have like the perfect body structure, Like bodybuilders, they are not only are they hard workers, but they also do have a genetic predisposition to having a body that's considered like good. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger worked really hard, but he had like a very good physique to build off of, right? So the thing would be like, yeah, you guys should work harder. Obviously, you don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger level of fit. There can be different levels of fit. Maybe you like to run. Maybe you like to, lift weights, etc. Mixture between the two, sprinting, blah, blah, blah. You get my point. You like to bike. And you shouldn't shame people for that, right? You shouldn't shame people for being fat, but we should understand that's not a good thing to be. But that's where it comes in more, especially things that you can't control. It's like, oh man, you have an ugly nose. Like, well, I can't really control it. You could get surgery, but I think that's like an unrealistic expectation.
For example,
right,
I was a gymnast, and I think, the training that I did not only trained my body, but it winded up training my mind and making me a stronger human, period.
As the skinniest person here.
Pretty skinny.
I don't know if he's the skinniest person there. He's certainly the most annoying person there.
You skinny? All right, as the second skinniest person here. No, it's like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, you do. I've had a bunch of girls like friend zone me, and I'd be like, why? And they're like, you're just too skinny. And I'd be like, damn. I mean, they kept it so real, I can't.
That's, yeah, kind of, say that, yeah. Is saying that there is a good and natural.
That's fair to their preference, as long as they're being respectful about it. If someone's like, I don't want to date you, Papa, because you're kind of too fat. If I asked, I'd be like, okay, If I didn't ask, then you probably don't need to tell me that I'm not too fat, but but if I did ask.
A connection between like feeling good, healthy habits, looking good, and there's a masculine ideal to that of some sort. Does anyone disagree with that here?
I do. Body diversity exists across like multiple spectrums, and I think that it's unfair to like only attribute like mental fortitude and like mental strength to like physical strength. Not having like a perfectly in shape body doesn't necessarily mean you're unhealthy by any means, and I also don't think it necessarily.
That's true. Just because not perfect. I mean, like I always say, especially when it comes to weight, like I'll go to your doctor regularly and like check in and see what's going on there. And as long as they're saying you're healthy, you're pretty much good. You should always like work to be in a reasonable like weight range. Like if you're if you're 300 pounds and you're still your levels are still coming up, that you're good. You should still like try to lose weights. Like in a way, you don't have to rush it, but you should take your time and have better habits. But yeah, sure.
Necessarily means that you like lack mental fortitude.
I don't think I'm saying that to look strong is the only way to be mentally strong. I think as long as you feel like you have a competent physical body, I think that's going to benefit your mental health.
How do you define competent?
Yeah, I think in terms of what you're trying to do. So are you a student? Like, what are your endeavors in life?
Me?
Yes.
I'm a student athlete.
Okay, what kind of sport?
I'm a springboard diver.
Okay, do you train to do springboard diving?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you feel good when you train and you do well on the springboard?
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. And if you feel competent at the endeavors you're trying to do, I think that's
but I think
what
that
contributes to
there are lots of like non-athletic people who may not be in like the same physical shape as like an athlete would be, right, who are competent in what they're trying to do because that like action has nothing to do with like their like.
So that's where I disagree with you. That's where I disagree with you. I think some people who don't realize the potential for their physical to blend into their mental is something that needs to be talked about. I think it's undervalued.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, if he's saying that like people should have a balance of physical and mental health, that I agree with. Like I think the Greek called it arate. Right. So it's like, you have your physical, your mental, and your spiritual. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. You should probably try to derive something from all those things. Like I've been saying, like I've been going to the gym with my wife. Like it's good to, focus on all those three things in some capacity. So
it's not.
I say like, for physically, I'd say like I've been trying to go to the gym. Mentally, like I don't really know. I try to have like conversation with my wife, and then spiritually also, just being a man. Like for me, spiritually, like I try to have like pretty deep, like robust conversations with my wife. Maybe that's not enough mentally, but we have like really like nice like nuanced conversations about like different things. And then spiritually, I value what it means to be a man like pretty significantly as I get older, as some kind of like a moral value to place into. I think it's important for people to have all three. Religion is one of those things that helps people spiritually a lot too. But
not that you have to work out to have a competent mind. It's that working out does help with competency. We already know when you work out, endorphins are released. People feel better. There's so many times I wake up, I don't want to go to the gym. It's going to be the worst day ever. I'm in a bad mood. I go, my endorphins are released. I'm great. I'm woken up. Like we have the science for that. So
especially
it's not like
it plays very little. We've had presidents in wheelchairs that were very confident, successful men who couldn't walk.
Well, sure, but like if you can walk, you should try to do some form. Even if you just walk 20 minutes a day, like you should try to do something that's like keeps you physically active, especially in a very sedentary world, you know, with like technology.
And so I'm going to say that it doesn't define you as a man.
there's always
But is this societal
It doesn't define you as a man. I'm just talking about how it's a good thing to do it. You know?
pressure to be in shape for men?
I don't-
And then when I don't like when my stomach, when I'm having sex, my stomach like is over her butt or whatever. Like I want to eat less. Me,
That's where I put it. It's like putting the belly on the back. I think Big Rob said that once. You know, it's a nice shelf to put it up there.
Change
like,
that.
you're fat.
We've spent all this time like deconstructing masculinity and all these things, but then it seems as though if a woman or someone dating says, hey, I want a swole guy, suddenly it's like, sorry, I don't think that's a societal pressure. That's what that woman wants and she's entitled to have.
Well, it's just the society will put a pressure on people to want a particular thing. It's called like a beauty standard. It doesn't necessarily mean that thing is wrong. A girl wanting an attractive or a fit guy, there's nothing wrong with that standard. It's attainable generally to work out. It's when people shame other people for not fitting that standard where the problem comes in.
Is context?
I also, you know, I have body type.
Yeah, I agree with
preferences.
that.
Like I'm not gonna say what it is, but there's certain girls where I'll go on and I'm like, you don't really have what I'm looking. I don't say that because that's
je ne sais quoi, so to speak.
the dick. But in my head, I'm just like, this isn't gonna work.
So
I
it's
think
one
that's
thing to have a
fair.
preference and another thing to make like a sweeping like conclusion and then like broadcast it everywhere. No, people are entitled to date their preference.
Because when you look at statistics, they say that, what is it, like 70% of CEOs are over the size 6'4", for example. So there is amongst men a pressure to be bigger, and bigger men tend to be in charge. And that's proven, statistically proven. And so there is a pressure for men who are naturally small.
I'm not sure if that statistic's real, but I guess it makes sense. Yeah, for sure. Those are like the halo effect for men, being like a tall person with like a deep voice. That's why I'm so successful.
Naturally overweight, naturally not as fit, to become fit or to become bigger.
Well, and every one of us here have heard little man syndrome. We've all
who hasn't heard that
every one
saying?
of us have
He's got Napoleon syndrome. He's got little man syndrome.
I believe it's a Neapolitan syndrome. Okay.
Thing though.
There's nothing you can do about it. And
That's when you're a mixed woman on her period. I like that joke. Yeah.
that's where it becomes harmful. Specifically, like, you know, short king spring or whatever. Like a person, I mean, you can't,
Short
like, I mean, there
king
is like, I guess, like on
spring,
Twitter,
baby.
I've seen like, oh, people getting a surgical procedure to break their legs and add 6 inches to their height or something like that.
It's stuff you can.
You know what I mean? It's like, you know, like, but like besides that, which is like a really expensive procedure, it's also like comes into socioeconomic
How would you know? Did you look into it?
background and things like that as well too. It's like you literally can't do anything.
I feel like that would be a terrible idea because it's just like you're on stilts. I feel like people that are taller, it's not just like all in your legs; it's in different parts of your body. So if that is real, it's kind of silly.
About that, I think that's where it becomes harmful. Which, like, all right, like if there's the pressure in which like I can't date a person,
Look like a goblin or something.
or I can't like get a position, or I can't do X, Y, and Z because I'm not a certain height, or something I literally cannot change about myself. What now?
What is big dick energy?
Oh,
It's when
it's an obnoxious meme for fucking Gen Zers.
confidence crosses the line of arrogance. That's exactly.
I don't.
People
I
have
don't
told me I
no.
have
That's
BDE.
You have BDE?
Yeah, people told me I had BDE.
You did in that back room.
Not to show off.
Even he said, look at that.
I think BDE is like just a confident man. I don't think it's an arrogant man. I don't find arrogance
Well, I think a lot of women have big dick energy, apparently, according to TikTok. Okay, Doja Cat apparently has a lot of big dick energy.
to be big dick energy. I find it to be insecure. If you're arrogant, you're trying to like, I don't.
There's no
I find
political
it
stage.
so odd to equate somebody's like the size of their genitals to like the quality of their character. Like what? That's nobody's business.
Oh my goodness! I mean, sure, we were just talking about penis size, but not. Gotta be so woke about it, okay?
It's more of
But sure, I guess.
it's like a metaphor.
I don't agree though.
Yeah, for confidence.
See, but
It's
that-
not really.
I mean, I guess he's not wrong, or they, whatever. They're not wrong. It's like saying you have tight pussy energy or you have big tit energy. Like it, you know, when I hear it as a man without a huge penis, I don't get offended. But I guess I could see why other people are like, well, what's wrong with my average sized dick with slightly over average girth? Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. I think they call it a little bit of a chode. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, bro. You know.
See, but then it comes back. Now we're getting into like a deeper conversation, which like
But my wife always gasses me up about it. She loves, you know, she at least she says she loves it, which I think is kind of fucked up because like I am Jewish, so.
some men see a value based off the size of what they're carrying between their legs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's why the conversation of big dick energy comes into place because people feel as though like a man that's like more. That's packing more down there, you know what I mean, is more like, one, they're better in bed, they're like more confident people, they're exuding a certain energy. So that like the stereotypes, so the stereotypes associated with having a big dick.
It's a lack of a need to overcompensate to society because you're adequate.
You know what you got.
You
You're
walk
confident.
with confidence because you can tell when somebody's putting on because they lack in certain ways. And men, me and people I know, equate manhood and masculinity to their dick size and how much money they got. Like it's like, yo, you feel more confident.
And sometimes that kind of stuff bleeds into violence. And you see that in domestic violence situations, like men are like the perpetrators of that by and large. There's something wrong with masculinity when it becomes violent.
Yeah, I've seen some studies, and I can't verify it, that say that like there's almost an equality in domestic abuse when it comes to men and women. Men just drastically underreport, which might be true. I mean, listen, again, I've been in situations where like women have hit me, but it doesn't hurt because they're women. It hurts here on the inside, guys. Okay, it hurts. It does, but I think that there's a level of there might be a level of truth to that. It's an interesting conversation to have. Obviously, men are physically stronger and more, they tend to be more violent and angry. So when they hit, it's going to be much more impactful. But I think it's something interesting to talk about because as a man, when you get hit, by a woman who doesn't hurt you, it's still it can hurt a bit. And, you can't really fight back. Sometimes it's kind of like annoying, you know what I mean? But yeah, it is what it is, right?
100%. I also think because of testosterone and a number of different things, men are inherently more violent.
But being able to control it, that's...
But most of the time, the people who bring up that point that I brought up is usually as a way to, dismiss male domestic violence against women. They're just like, well, women do too. It's like, instead of being like, yeah, that is fucked. It's all bad.
Yeah, we should
It's being able to control.
That's where the responsibility comes in.
Yeah. You hear the whole saying, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I think there's a lot of wisdom behind that saying.
Oh, George Orwell said,
I don't know if that's super relevant here, but sure.
People sleep peaceably in their beds at night because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. I think that's a big thing, but the key is to be ready, to have the ability.
The key is to be ready, but not looking for it. I think that there's a lot of tough guy men out there who are almost looking for a situation where they feel justifiable in causing violence. I absolutely think that that's something that some men fantasize about. They're like, oh man, I can't wait. I hope this person crosses me because I want to do X, Y, and Z to them. I do think that that's definitely a factor.
And also the humility and the confidence to not use it unless it's absolutely necessary.
True?
I don't think we teach boys that enough because I think promoting violence is extremely toxic.
I think it's pretty based to promote violence. Violence is pretty based. I'm just
something inherently violent about masculinity.
Inherently violent?
I don't think that's right.
I don't know if inherently, maybe. I think it's just an interesting question. I don't know if I would say it's inherently violent. I would say that men tend to be more violent. Masculinity would be more violent than femininity, I suppose, but I don't know.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. If a majority of men were bad, evil, violent, a lot of us would not be sitting here today. Okay, we'd still be in the Stone Age. You know what I mean? That's why I kind of push back against that idea that inherently men are violent, inherently masculinity is bad, is violent, because I don't believe that that's true.
Why do you think that such a vast majority of mass shootings are done by men?
I think.
Good question. I don't know, but probably because men are more violent than women. Yeah, I mean, men. I just think that men's frustrations with the world manifest differently. So I guess I don't really know, but it's not a good thing.
That's a mental health issue. I think that, and this is why we're talking about men in crisis. Yeah, because men are more willing to do what they have to, to not do what they have to do, but to take action in terms of that. And that's why we talk about this, men in crisis.
I wouldn't. It sounds like he's putting a positive spin on it. I don't think that I don't know if he's actually trying to. I don't really know. I think that men are more violent and are more prone to doing those horrible things. I would say that men are less empathetic and have less value on other people's lives than women, generally speaking, at least when you're younger and you aren't self-aware enough. That's one of the things about being a woman. I think women have a more emotional intelligence, because you're not seeing women going into schools and shooting them up, right? And women are also facing issues as well. So I truly wonder why it's men.
A lot of those mass shooters are males because a lot of males, they don't know how to have an outlet or to find outlets to talk about what their issues are. That's what it comes down to.
There's probably a level of truth to that.
We know that these mass shooters, most of them are white males. We know that. So when I talk to a lot of white males that have traditional values, say, or maybe a traditional upbringing, they feel like they've been made to be the villains of society. And so I feel that pressure a lot of times. I feel like, hey, when we're having this conversation, even I hear words like patriarchy, traditional society, right? So I feel like I'm being put in a box.
I don't think. I don't know. I'm trying to look into it. I guess maybe most mass shooters are proportionately white men. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just looking at this statistic, and it doesn't seem like proportionally. You operate by proportionality. I think that for the most part, we only really show when white men commit mass shootings and not so much when other people commit mass shootings. Right. So, for instance, this is a number of mass shootings in the United States between 1982 and January 2023 by shooter, race, or ethnicity. So, about 60% of the United States population, is white, and 15% is black. Right. So, you would generally see this number here of black people be a quarter of the 73, and yet 24 is higher than a quarter. So, I'm not saying black people are more violent. I understand systemic racism. We don't have to get into the specifics. All I'm saying here is that I think that we only really report when white people cause violence a lot of times because we have a very racially loaded like media narrative now where everything's very much about race. Like back in the day, we used to only really report on like when white women would get hurt because white women are the ultimate damsels in distress, whereas black women are considered more masculine and, you know, nobody cares about them and, you know, racism and whatnot. But nowadays, the narrative is shifted where we overly focus on race, where it's always like we will only really show like when the white guy does this, when the white guy does that. Now, they might also be causing more impactful mass shootings. You know, I don't know if that's a part of the statistic here as I look into it very quickly. So I could be wrong in that part. But all I am saying is that, like, from a proportionality perspective, it doesn't seem like white people are disproportionately causing mass shootings. So in the United States, just something to bring up, you know.
And made to be the villain. And I hear this from a lot of white males. I feel like I'm the bad guy. I feel like I'm the villain. So maybe at some point, mentally, they're breaking and becoming that villain. They're becoming that monster.
I think you're giving incels a little too much credit here. I like to be absolutely honest with you. We have a lot of antisocial individuals, probably like undiagnosed, like mental health issues. That's a problem for sure. But I think that we should be aware of not going too far. Because like if you're going and shooting up a school and killing 19 people or 21 people or however many people, you know, I don't care about you. You should have just killed yourself. You should never do that. But if you're a person who's committed a mass shooting, I lose a significant amount of like respect for you at that point.
Be the exception. If you're worried about being put into a box that is one that is like clearly harmful based on like what people are doing, then don't do that. Mass shooters is like obviously like a sensitive topic, but a lot of them are like men with like little to no friends who like go out and in like a burst of rage commit like atrocities. And I don't think that it has to do with how they're hardwired as men. I think that it has to do with how
it might be a little bit of how they're hardwired as people, though. They might just be like additionally lacking empathy because I would never do that. Obviously, and if you're watching at home, you probably would never do that either. But it's like, why did they do that? You know? And so I wonder if there's like an issue, like there's some kind of sociopath or whatever it would be, you know? Like Luke Skywalker, he's shooting small animals, shooting womp rats, and it's like, bro, that's the sign of a serial killer. Okay, what are you doing?
society like treats people like that.
I agree with you on the point that men need support and they need someone to talk to and talk about these issues.
I don't think that men have been taught emotional intelligence throughout life, right? We know, so we respond with anger. All right, if I'm disappointed, if I feel resentment, or I feel contempt, or I feel embarrassment, or I feel jealous, or any of these things that fall under that one thing, we respond with one way.
Well, okay, so I half agree with him. I think that men tend to just be angry. I think that testosterone just brings out anger more than anything else. Like I think that's just one of the ways men, you know, express their emotions, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that as long as you don't blow up. But at the same time, like, yeah, I don't think that young men are necessarily, I don't even know if it's being taught or not. Like, I don't know if we're teaching young women to be more emotionally intelligent. Maybe we are. Maybe we're teaching young women that they have to be very like hypersensitive and hyper aware of like men's feelings or they're going to get hurt. Maybe that's part of it. I don't really know. Maybe that's why women are more intelligent, emotionally intelligent, or maybe it just has to, I personally think it has to do like with, you know, I don't know, but I guess just inherent women equality. But men can learn it, so maybe it's more of a social construct than I think. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about, but I wouldn't doubt it if like women are taught to be very hyper aware of like what men want to like protect them in some capacity historically. So women maybe are more emotionally intelligent because they have to be. It's almost like a survival instinct at that point, and men just really need to grunt and fart, you know.
And if we learn how to communicate better, if we were able to say, yo, you know what, I resent that you spoke to me that way, or you know, I feel jealous, you know, of whatever. If it was okay for men to express those things, we wouldn't feel the need to just go, you know what, fuck you.
You can take any two 3-year-olds. You take a 3-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. I have 2 girls. You know, their first instinct is to.
I have 2 girls and a cup. That was an inappropriate joke considering the context of what we're talking about, but it's just sometimes I don't think before I speak.
Lie to me, to manipulate me, to say their sister said this when she didn't. I have a friend that has all boys. You know what they do? They throw a fire truck at your head. Bam. That's a natural response. That's not a learned behavior. They're taught.
Oh, that's totally a learned behavior. And you give kids only like cars and gun and G.I. Joe action figures and give girls Barbie dolls. Like you
I don't think you can say it's one or the other. I think they're.
I don't know. I think that young boys probably gravitate towards the G.I. Joes and young women gravitate towards Barbies. I'm sure that there's a level of social pressure as well, but I don't think that like. I think that what happened is from like a marketing perspective is like, oh, we see the trends that girls like and the trends that boys like. Let's advertise this to boys. Let's advertise this to girls. It does unfortunately end up putting like young boys and girls into a category, but that category was originally created because young boys and girls liked the thing, right? And I think that's how these things tend to work.
There is some interplay between both.
Thank you guys for your honesty, your like willingness to go to uncomfortable places, willingness to debate one another. Yeah, I'm interested to see like what sticks with me like in days to come after our conversation, because I think so many things were raised in such sort of a diverse perspective group.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Editing on these is so weird.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah,
nice to meet several of them.
I should have just
Just feel so abrupt sometimes.
got to the importance of handshakes.
Just like you guys said, masculinity is something I think that is misunderstood.
You know, I had some people agree with me and disagree with me.
The entire thing is uncomfortable. And
my favorite part. Oh, that's hard.
Agreeing to
I'd still saying I'd fuck the shit out of that person. Well, I wouldn't. I'm married. I'm just saying that they're attractive. Okay.
disagree with
Sorry. Maybe that's my masculinity leaking through. All right. Leading with what I find.
certain other people. And
I liked when things turned into like this weird conversation about daddy issues.
Y'all got my number. When you gonna do another one?
What was I thinking when the conversation went to buttholes?
Well, you brought it there, sir. Okay.
How do I answer that?
You brought it there. Okay. Cool video. Let's hope it doesn't get DMCA'd when I put it up.
I want Papa God to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.